Well, welcome to our Facebook Live. We've had a little technical difficulties with some of our equipment. Sorry it took us a few minutes to get started on our Facebook Live, but want to let you know, appreciate the questions you've already sent in ahead of time. We've had somewhere around 40 questions that have been sent out to different people across the community. I want to welcome the community and all of the stakeholders that are in our community to this Facebook Live. We're hoping to inform you a little bit on where we're going as far as the district and what we're looking to do to open school back up in August. Again, I want to preface that by saying that things are changing daily. So what we're going to be talking to you about today could change tomorrow, and if it does, we adapt to that, and it could change next week. So that all this information is as of today. I want to let everybody know that our instructional platform that we're looking to deliver to students in Lamesa, we're going to have two platforms. We're going to have a online digital platform for parents who decide to keep their students at home, and we will be delivering that vehicle to them every day and supporting that every day. And then we're hoping that most of our students will return back to school on August 19th and be in our classrooms, because that's what we feel is best for students and that's what they learn best. So those are both of the two avenues that we're going to be pushing out, and I'm going to have guidance on that the middle of next week. The board has to go ahead and vet this next week at a board meeting, and then they're going to be looking at both this plan, which is our instructional plan, and our health and wellness plan, which are health and safety protocols that we're going to be implementing as far as the school year comes back next year. So the plans will look similar in the sense that we're going to be pushing information out from our classroom through Google Classroom. That's going to be our platform. Our platform will have various things attached to it as far as learning. And if you're in class with us at the school, you'll be getting that same platform as you'll be getting if you're at home. So if we do have to go remote at any point in time this school year, whereas somebody gets we have a COVID case and we have to dismiss school for a day or so, we will be going directly remote. And on that remote learning, it'll be just like what they were doing in school. Some of our instructional components we've got a video component that we're going to be able to video our class, and we'll be able to synchronize that live to the home of the student that's doing distance learning, and we'll be able to record that, so if a student isn't able to catch it live, then they'll be able to catch it in a recording later on that day and be able to do the same thing students are doing in the classroom. We've got a lot of people that are responsible for pulling this off. A lot of our instructional team, our administrators, our leadership team across the school district, and a lot of teachers that are very good in technology have been working with us to put together this plan. We're really excited about it. We think we're going to deliver really high quality instruction, whether we're in the classroom or whether we're going remote. And so we want to calm your fears on that. I know there'll be a lot of questions about what that's going to look like and how that's going to be pushed out to students. One of the big changes is going to be this. Last spring, we basically had in March, we had to go real quickly to online and learning. We had no choices. We gave devices out, and we did the best we could. I feel like our teachers did a great job of communicating and working with students. But at that time, there wasn't a lot of accountability on the student side. Students did their work when they could. We did packets at times, and parents really tried to struggle through that, and we know that was a battle. This next year is going to be a lot more accountability coming from TEA. Students are going to have to be engaged on a daily basis. They're going to have to be engaged in the activities that are going on in the classroom, just like they're in the classroom. And if they're not, then they're counted absent. And when they're counted absent, you have to be at school 90% of the time. And so that rule is going to be in place. It's not going to be anything like last year. And we're glad it's not, because we feel like kids fell behind last year, and we can't have that happen another consecutive year. So that's what it'll look like this next year, accountability wise. So students will have to be engaged. And so parents have asked me questions like, well, I have a first grader, and are y'all going to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do if I'm at work? Well, we can't really do that. We're going to be at school with 130 students a day. We're going to have our hands full keeping them busy. We're going to be pushing that information to your student at home, and we're going to be giving them support. We'll be available during conference times, but you have to remember last year our teachers were really available all the time for you. This year they will not be, because they'll be teaching kids in the classroom, and then they'll be trying to work with your kid if they have questions during conference times. So that'll change a little bit. The other thing that we're going to ask parents to do once they get all the information to them in the next 2 weeks is prior to school starting, online registration, there's going to be a form, and you're going to have to declare at that time, do you want to be online or do you want to be in present at the campus for the first 9 weeks of school? And that declaration will be made, and we'll have to stick to that. We're not going to allow people to change that declaration. You'll be able to every 9 weeks. So 2 weeks prior to the 9 weeks ending, the first 9 weeks, you can come back and say, hey, the remote wasn't great for me. I'm ready to come back to the class. And you can let us know that, and we'll make plans to switch back. The reason that's so important to us is we have a lot of logistics that go into what we have to prepare for and how we are making sure we can social distance at school and all the health and safety protocols that we're going to be putting in place. So I know you may have a lot more questions about the health and safety, so I'm going to try to get to some of those questions. And you may have questions about the instructional as well, and if you do, be sure and shoot those to you. I didn't get a lot of instructional questions for these first 40, and I'll try to answer the ones I have here as best possible. Some will maybe carry till next week. So let's kind of start going through these. Are kids and staff going to have to wear masks in school? As per the TEA and governor's orders, we will be having students do that that are over 10 years old when possible. And the key word is when possible. There's a lot of times we won't be able to do that or that we choose not to because we feel like we can social distance in the classroom. Obviously, during passing periods when we have masses of kids out, we're going to be doing that. And we're for sure going to be doing that when we're in common areas of the school. Another question, will elementary students be sharing school supplies? They will not. I know in the past we have encouraged the sharing of school supplies. We will not be sharing school supplies for a lot of reasons, but mainly to make sure we cut down on the spread of infection. If we choose to do virtual learning, will my child be assigned to a teacher? Yes, this is not going to be where you're working with your teacher solely, you're working with your kids solely. We are actually going to be engaged pretty heavily in your kids' online learning experience. We're hoping that they'll be logged in with us synchronously every day with the lesson. If they're not, they're going to have to catch that information and get it done by the end of the day. That's going to be a requirement of online digital learning. Will school day be like the normal school hours, and what will the precautions for children safety be? Well, we're developing those detailed plans right now, and I'll have a lot of those next week, and I'll have them pushed out through our Facebook and Twitter, and we'll also have them on our website next week. Both the instructional plan and the health plan will be out next week. And so as far as the details of those plans, I really can't go through those right now. If a doctor orders my child to stay home, what types of accommodations, interventions will be offered, and will homebound be available to the student? If a student's required for homebound services, we'll be providing those through distance learning. And so we've had that question come up, but we can provide that through the distance learning vehicle. Question number 6. We plan to send our student to school face-to-face instruction. If things change for whatever reason, we'll be allowed to change. Again, we talked about that a while ago. Every 9 weeks, you will be able to change, but once you lock in for the first 9 weeks, we're going to have you committed to that just for us to be able to have structure and stability. Will remote learning be offered to students K-2? Yes, it will be offered to students K-2. It'll look a little different than the students from 3 through 12, but yes, we will offer that. Again, I want to caution parents that are thinking about that. We're all aboard on you doing that. You're going to have to be a real close partner with us, because teaching a kid how to read, we can't do that solely from our standpoint. We can push out some of the mini lessons. We can help the parent go through some guided reading with the student. But if you're expecting to be at work every day and us to teach them how to read with no one there supervising, that's going to be a tall task for your first grader to handle. So I would caution you on that prior to making a choice like that. Number 8, what happens when a student comes to school fine in the morning and starts running fever later in the day when the students have been exposed? We have protocols in place that mitigate that very scenario, and we'll have that in our health plan, and our teachers, our school nurses will have those protocols. And just remember, fever is not typical in kids with COVID. That's not a typical symptom. They're usually asymptomatic. So the fever thing, although it applies to adults pretty heavily, and kids, that's not a good indicator of whether they have COVID or not. That's just coming from medical doctors. Number 9, how will grading work in honors classes at LHS? Students that complete this work from home, won't they be able to have more resources? Students who work remotely or in person will have the same opportunity as per the TEA guidance. So we're not going to be discriminating from a child that is in an honors class or at school versus one that's doing it digitally. How many students are teachers allowed to have in the classroom? There's no set standard for that. TEA has not capped that or put any square footage limits on that. LSD will, and we intend to keep class sizes very small, and we intend to practice social distancing in those classrooms. If a student or teacher does test positive, how are we going to inform us, and will they be quarantined? Yes, we will have information to all the stakeholders that are involved, whether your student was in that classroom or in that school, and the person will quarantine for 14 days. Typically that protocol is 14 days and then a 72-hour window after the quarantine to make sure there's no more symptoms, and then they're allowed to come back to work. Same thing with the child. 14 days, 72 hours after the quarantine, with no symptoms, back to school. That's just the set by the Department of Health. Teachers test positive, same thing, the same scenario as the student. Both the teacher and the kid have the same scenarios as far as quarantining if they have the virus. Are students going to be switching classrooms? We are not. We are going to switch classrooms. I know a lot of folks have asked, are we just going to have the teacher switch classrooms? No, we're going to switch classrooms. We're going to do that in an orderly way, and we're going to make sure we're social distancing while we do it. We feel like that with the way we have our platform set up for each teacher, they have their own setups in each one of their classrooms. That would really displace our teachers from the online teaching that some of them are going to be doing if we move the teacher and not the students. And we really can't do that in middle school and high school. That's not real feasible. The student continues to test positive after 14 days. How will that impact the attendance? And will that be impacted for the parents as far as attendance issues? Well, the good news about the way we're delivering our instruction, as soon as a student has to go 14 days of quarantine, he'll be immediately moving to online instruction. And he'll be counted as present as long as he's doing his online work. And so that shouldn't affect their attendance at all. On down here, will there be constant monitoring throughout the day as a fever may present itself after the normal morning temperature checks? No, we are not going to be running temperature checks on kids all day long. If you read the TEA guidance, one of the things they say is temperature is not a very good thing to be doing on students because it is not a good indicator of whether they have COVID or not. So we are not. We do have infrared thermometers in every classroom. And if a student's feeling bad, we're going to be able to take their temperature before we even send them to the nurse. But if they're running temperature, they're going to go to the nurse and we're going to send them home because we don't want students that are running temperature giving infections to anybody in the school. Not necessarily because they may have COVID or not have COVID. So that's always been our protocol, and that will continue to be our protocol. They got to be fever free for 24 hours. And that would be the same thing for an employee. If they have fever, but then they didn't test positive for COVID, then they got to be fever free before they come back to work. For students who have to attend school, is there any way we can have sanitizing stations more available and more visible? And this answer is absolutely yes. We're working on ordering some of those for the front lobbies and for the common areas right now. And so we're working on that. What is the modified plan for disabled students? I really didn't understand this question, so whoever submitted that, you might want to be more have a little bit more clarity in what you're really asking on that, because I'm not really sure what exactly you're asking. So please ask that in maybe a little bit more detailed form. Are we going to disinfect all items used throughout the day? Pencils, scissors, desk, and I put on here, we will not be sharing supplies, so you don't have to worry about your kids' supplies. If they're the only ones using them, then no one else is going to get affected. But we will be doing desks. We're having students wipe down their desks before they come in. Buses, we're doing it on each trip in the morning and the afternoon. We're going to be doing door handles in common spaces of the school between every period. And yes, the gym and playground, we're going to use germ blasts to be spraying those common areas. Will items such as pencils, scissors, desks, rails, buses, door handles, equipment to be disinfected? We just talked about that, yes. What will be the process when someone on campus tests positive? We already kind of talked about that. That'll be a 14-day quarantine. We'll clean the building. We'll probably dismiss that campus. May not always be the whole campus. It just depends on if we had a self-contained room or was it a classroom where at middle school, we rotated 6 classes. Our protocol is going to be dismiss, go online learning immediately. So that next day or 2 that we're cleaning the building, those students will all be online. They will not be counted absent as long as they're engaged, as long as they do their work. Then we'll come back to school once the building's clean and safe to come back in. Parents obviously have the opportunity, if they feel like they needed to extend their kids because of exposure, they can do that. They'll have to be present. They'll have to be doing online learning, just like the other students that have chosen to do that. Will lunchtimes be handled differently? Yes, we're working on that. Those are pretty tricky. We're working on a structure for lunch and for breakfast, and maybe moving back to some breakfast in the classroom. Can children wear face shields instead of masks? Yes, we're going to have both face shields and masks available. We're going to encourage parents to purchase masks for their own students so the student can come home, can take it home, they can wash it, they can be entrusted with making sure that's a clean mask every day. We're not going to have enough masks to have disposable masks for every student every day all year. That's going to be a challenge. Kids under 10 will not be wearing a mask, and that's just by TEA guidelines. And a lot of it has to do with our teachers will be managing masks all day versus trying to manage learning with those young ones. Had a vague question on one of them. It was pretty detailed, and it had to do with when you're homeschooling your kid, are they going to be able to, healthcare going to be provided? There's a lot of, I was real vague. It kind of ran together, so I didn't really know what you're asking there. So if I don't answer your question, please clarify what you may have asked. Classrooms are near full as it is, so how would we be able to split up classes to ensure social distancing? We're working on some of that currently. It's going to depend on how many students that go online and how many are actually here at school. And so we'll have to cross that bridge a little bit later. We are trying to do everything we can to make sure there's social distancing in classrooms. But remember, the guidance says right now, when possible. And sometimes it's not possible to have social distancing in every classroom. We don't have the square footage in some of our classrooms to make that happen. And to make it happen, we'd have to split those classes and hire another teacher. And we do not have the economics, honestly, to do that right now. And I don't know that any school district would. So we're going to do the best we can with the social distancing and make, whenever we can, it's going to happen. How will PE occur at elementary and with 3 to 4 classes going at a time? We're not going to be sending 3. I know we've done that in the past. We are not going to be sending 3 or 4 classes at a time. We're working on schedules right now where we may have 2 classes going at a time to where we can spread those kids out. And we're planning on taking kids outside a lot more when it's all possible and when the weather cooperates. Will visitors allowed to become on campus, and can parents eat lunch with their children? The answer is going to be no. I know that's not a question. I know that you don't want to hear that answer, but for the safety of our staff and the safety of our students, we're going to have to allow only minimal visitors, and that's going to be for ARDS, for 504 meetings, for dyslexia meetings, for mandatory meetings that we have to have. Otherwise, we are going to probably prohibit any eating in the lunchroom with students. That just is a recipe for spread of the virus when we can't monitor that. And that's a protocol most schools are putting in place, by the way, not just us. That's a standard protocol. How will pick up the elementary campuses since all classes gather outside? We're working on that. We're working on staggered dismissals. We're working on some of those things right now. Great questions. And again, I really appreciate the questions. They're really good and they're real exploratory. I like that. I purchased disposable masks so my children can wear them instead of wearing the same cloth every day for prevent contaminations. Can we make sure that they don't wear the same one every day? And that, yes, we can sure do that. Honestly, we're encouraging you to purchase a mask for your student and to take it home and wash it so that you're in charge of that, because we do not have enough disposable for everybody. How will social distancing look in elementaries? It's going to look different at every campus. Obviously, our 2 elementary campuses have pretty big classrooms. We feel like we can pull that off in the elementaries. Middle school, high school is going to be a little bit bigger of a challenge. We are going to make kids wear masks when we're going down passing halls and passing periods, just because of the kind of contact they may end up having with other students. Will teachers be changing classrooms? We already mentioned that. No, they're going to be staying in their own classroom. Will there be a full-time nurse at all campuses? Yes, there is a full-time nurse. Not only is there a full-time nurse, but we've upgraded on a couple of our campuses to RNs. We hired an RN now on South, and we're going to have an LVN at North, and we feel like that's going to be a great asset for us to have. We've also moved some of our CNAs to help with our nurses at both South and North, and I think that's going to help us be able to handle the caseloads that we might have at those campuses. Will classrooms be segregated on the playgrounds? I'm not sure exactly what that term means. When I hear the word segregation, that's usually not a positive thing, but I think what you're asking is that are we going to make sure that they're not all just free playing and running on the same? We are. We're going to have stations where students are going to be at, and that way we can be able to mitigate the students between one another. If a parent chooses distance learning, will the school provide laptops? Absolutely. We're going to have a one-to-one set up for every student in the school this next year. How will kids with IEPs and 504s receive services like dyslexia? We hope that we accomplish that through live teaching every day, so we're going to have them tune in with us, and we'll be going through stuff with them live versus you have to doing that at home. Got a few more here that just came in late. Ask if will masks be required. Masks will be required when we can't social distance. So the answer is yes. And we will be using them in common areas, and passing periods, and those type of things for sure. How will children in elementary school be social distance? We kind of talked about that already. We're going to be doing that as best we can with moving desks around and those type of things. Will teachers be changing classrooms? We already addressed that. There's several other questions that were asked here on this question, and then there was one that was alluded to in the newspaper. I want to say a month or so ago about us, making sure we have a great plan. We feel like we have a fantastic plan. We've compared it to some of the bigger districts in the state, and we feel like our plan is as good as anybody's out there. We are ready for your kid to come back. We feel like that they need us, we need them, and we're ready to educate them. And here's what we can't guarantee. We can't guarantee that no one's going to get this virus. I don't think anybody in this world can commit to that. All we can do is say that we're going to put the very most safe protocols in place that we can, and we're going to try to implement them with fidelity. And we're going to make sure that our teachers are safe, because we don't only want your students safe, we want our teachers safe. And we talked to them about that today. I met with 2 campuses today remotely, individually. When we met with them and discussed concerns, we discussed protocols and had some great questioning from them. And I met a couple of days ago with our high school, middle school. So we've met with all of our staff prior to meeting with you. I did not want to give you any information before I gave our staff. And so honestly, they're putting their necks on the line, literally, for your child, and to make sure your kid's educated and he does not fall behind. So we want to make sure they're safe, just like we want to make sure your child's safe. With that being said, we have gone probably about 25 minutes because we had technical difficulties. I don't want to spend the whole night me talking, so if you have some additional questions, we can maybe handle those at this time. And if we can't handle all of them now, we're going to be back next week with some of the health and safety protocols for the district and what that's going to look like more specifically. So maybe we'll wait to see if we have any questions come up on the screen.
Will recess be shortened?
Will recess be shortened? We're not going to shorten recess. What we're probably going to do with recess is like we're doing with lunch, and that's really tied to recess most of the time for us, and that's to make sure we're in groups. And we rotate groups each day so that we're not intermingling kids. As you know, most of the time when kids play on the playground, it's free play. They just run around and have a great time. We're going to have to monitor that and probably have that much more structured. The same thing with PE. We're going to be taking them out a lot more when we can, and we're going to be structuring them in maybe the groups that are in their class that they come from the classroom with. There's a lot of things we got to put in place, and there's no foolproof method, and we don't want your kid to feel like they can't be a kid either. We want them to be kids. Great question though. Doesn't look like we're getting a lot more questions. What I'll do here is kind of summarize this to you right now. This is, if you haven't been listening to the media, I think the governor is in a real bad spot, and I don't know what else you do. He's trying to open up the Texas, but yet, we've got these cases spiking. So he's in a really tough spot. I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't doubt that things do change between now and a few weeks. He may give schools a little bit more latitude, especially Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston, where they've got a lot of cases. He may allow them to do remote learning a little bit longer before they actually have in-person. Some of y'all may not understand, but the TEA guidelines are that we provide 5 days of instruction for every student that their parents want to send to us. And then we also have to provide remote learning if they choose that. So we're setting that up the best we can. We did a survey, and our survey indicated that 60% of our parents, as of 2 weeks ago, wanted to come back and be in school. And 40% said they think they're going to prefer online learning. We hope that number changes. We hope it changes for the better, and we hope that more like 80% of you want to come back. We feel like we're going to have a great learning environment, and we're going to keep your kids safe. Again, there is no guarantees, but we feel like a better environment for them is here in school.
Will high school have open lunch?
Great question for high school, and we're debating that right now. Will high school have open lunch? At this stage, I'm recommending they do not, and let me tell you why. It's not because I don't want them to go out for lunch. I had open lunch when I was in high school, and I know not many schools have it anymore. But we're going to have to do a screening questionnaire, and parents are going to actually have to do that for us. So we're encouraging parents to have a questionnaire of your students before they come to school every day, as far as who they've been around, if they've been around somebody with a cough, have they had any symptoms of a headache, and that's something that the parents are going to be asking their child on a daily basis, and then they'll send them to school. We'll be doing the same thing with our staff, and you'll be self-temperaturing in them, and we may temperature them to check them as well. But when they get to school, you are entrusting us that they've not been in contact with anybody else except for the kids at school. And so if we let them go to lunch and they go to McDonald's and they encounter, an oil field worker there that happened to have the COVID, and then they bring it back to campus, and then they go to their classroom, and then one of our staff members gets it from that encounter, then we've just endangered our staff member. Not only that, they're going to endanger other students. And so we're going to have to really think hard on that. We're going to have that discussion with the board. If we're going to really be serious about health, then that's got to be one of the factors we look at. And that's what we're looking at that hard, and we're looking at that really heavy. Some people have asked about UIL. What do we do with that UIL activities? The way UIL is structured is that if you are at school 4 hours a day and you are present and you are attending school, then you're eligible to participate in athletics. Now, the school can restrict that further. We're choosing not to, but that's going to put a lot of stress on students. They're going to have to make sure they're engaged in their online learning if they want to participate in athletics and they're not at school. We are changing our work program. Our work program has, in the past, we haven't had to deal with this issue, but if you're going to be in the work program, our work program here at the high school, you're going to have to be at school to be involved in our work program. And the logic behind that from us is that if a kid can be in the work program at Higginbotham or McDonald's or wherever they're working, they're putting themselves in pretty good risk out there that they need to be at school. So our stance is going to be, you come to school and you can be in the work program. You don't come to school, you can't be in the work program. And I know that may not settle well with folks, but we're here to keep our kids safe. And if we're going to allow them to participate in a school-sponsored work program, they're going to also have to be at school. So those are great questions. We're debating some of those things, and we're actually discussing those with our board this next Tuesday, some of those issues.
Will athletes be wearing masks also?
Athletes will not be wearing masks while they're engaged in their activities. What we're doing right now, even with our strength and conditioning and with our sports specific right now, students that are entering into and exiting from the facility are wearing masks. And while they're involved in say, the activity of football in the field, they're not going to be wearing a mask. And that's one of the UIL guidelines right now. So yes, we are, but it's not at all times. Don't think we have any more questions. We'll get a few more minutes. I'll wrap up. I want to thank Frankie for, usually our device is kind of on a tripod and we're all real stable, and he gets to sit back there and just do his thing, but he had to hold his phone this whole time, so I'm sure his hands fixed to cramp. But I really appreciate him going the extra mile. He does a great job on social media for us. And any more last questions, Frankie, before we head out? Okay, guys, listen, I call it the same bat time, same bat channel next week on Wednesday. We'll do a 6 o'clock Facebook Live, and we'll talk a lot more about health and safety, and I'll have specifics, and by then all of this stuff should be on our website. It should be on there by Wednesday morning, so you can take a look at that and ask any more questions you might have based on the policies that you read through. God bless you guys. Continue to feed your faith, not your fear, especially during where we're at right now in our communities. And God bless you, and have a great evening.